I'm Stephen Downey, and you're very welcome to episode 32 of the Mindful Living Guide. This week, I have the pleasure of talking to a good friend of mine, Barbara Byrne, who is an author, a coach, and a guide on the Camino. Many of you might have heard of Camino de Santiago, but there's also Caminos in Ireland you may have never heard of. This week I have great conversation with Barbara about her own journey, which is pretty remarkable now, to be honest. And she's an amazing person, and I hope you really get a lot from it. But I also really enjoyed, on a personal level, chatting about the Camino. It's something I've always wanted to do, and it's great to know that with people like Barbara, that it's so accessible now, and we can have a guide all along the way. So sit back and enjoy this week's episode of the Mindful Living Guide. As I said, I've got an amazing guest here. Her name is Barbara Byrne, and we've known each other a couple of years now, but we're only finally getting sit down to have a great chat. And I'm delighted to welcome Barbara Byrne to the Mindful Living Guide.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, it's great to be here. Strange after all this time, but yeah.
Yeah, it's one of these things where you meet people over the internet, and you get to know them so well over the years, because I know you've been on an amazing journey, which started off, we've had many deep conversations over the years about different commonalities we've had through our own journeys, but to just to start on, just where your journey started, because I know you were in Slimming World for many years, and you made some massive changes to your life over that time.
Yeah. I suppose back in 2010 was when my Slimming World journey started. Hard to believe it was 12 years ago now. Um, and it was having got to that point in time of I just couldn't live the way I was living anymore. But I didn't realize that the link between the weight loss and the personal development or the mindset and that kind of work, I didn't realize that for probably another 5 or 6 years after that.
Wow.
Um, but when I lost my weight, I suppose I had that realization of, well, if I can do that, what else?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it began.
Yeah. And yeah, it's interesting what you're saying, that, like, I'd say a lot of people are in the same position though as well, that they kind of go on one journey thinking this is what I want, but then they realize the difference in mindset can make to their life. And it's tell me about that, the different, like, how you've noticed now from the Barbara now to the Barbara back then,
Oh
the
gosh.
difference.
I'd say even the Barbara 2 years ago, I can really see a difference since pre and post COVID.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of that is actually down to you because I'll never forget 3 weeks into COVID, you were offering your time to a mindfulness group and you invited everybody in your group to join. And I turned up that day and pretty much every day, I'd say 7 days a week, 8 a.m. Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. on a Sunday, and 11 a.m. on a Saturday, I showed up for a mindfulness class. And I got to learn so much just about sitting in the moment, accepting where I'm at, accepting all the things that were happening in the world that were out of my control. And although they were things I would have always been aware of,
Mhm.
I don't really think they had the same meaning until I realized the rest of the world was in the same boat. It was the same chaos. And yet, within my family, as in myself and my partner, my eldest daughter had come back home, and my younger daughter, we actually had a great time. I know not a lot of people did, but for me, my eldest daughter came home to see her relationship blossom with her sister, and was just lovely. We cooked, we walked, we talked. From the very beginning, the one thing that I had said to all of us was we have to discuss how we feel, because anybody could be having a good day or a not so good day, and taking the head off each other wasn't going to be the answer. So that was a big thing for me, with discovering the mindfulness. It was the awareness about my emotions and how they could impact not just me but others.
And I think you said one key word, and it's something that I keep talking about and talking about and talking about lately with mindfulness, is just awareness.
Yeah.
Just that ability to just befriend our emotions. Sometimes you can have difficult. I'm sure over that time there's been many days where you've gone to that class and not want to be there, and sat with difficult emotions. And I think it's one thing about that group, and they are still going, aren't they? Actually, the same group, yeah. Because I haven't been able to check in a long time, and it's a beautiful group of people. And if you're listening, hello, how are we all keeping?
We'll share it with them.
We'll share it with them. Oh, no, definitely send it on to them. But they're a lovely group of people, but it's such a friendly group that they're all out there for each other as well. And I think one thing over the years, and with practicing mindfulness as well, is that sharing it. There's a massive difference between sitting on your own with an app and sitting there with a group. And I'm sure you probably noticed yourself that difference as well, have you?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that feeling of not being on your own. And when you get to the bit about the inquiry, what you learn from other people. So you may have felt something similar, but you may not have been able to voice it, or you may not have fully understood what it was, but somebody else has put it into the words and you have those aha moments. And then it's also the thing of we're in it together. So whatever you're feeling, because it's nearly like the roller coaster when somebody is up and you might be down, they're there for you, and then vice versa. When they need you, you're there for them. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've got from it, and the friendships like that have developed it's unbelievable.
Fantastic.
Unbelievable.
And I love that. It was just I think I was teaching with them for a couple of weeks, and it just happened to say, listen, if anyone wants to come along, just come along and have a look. And so I'm actually over the moon. It's something that I'm really proud of, the fact that you're still in the group, and it's still enjoying the but let's just talk about Barbara now as well. And like over the last few years, like you've been training to be a coach as well, and you brought that into your business so much.
Yeah. Well, I suppose back in 2019 was when I did my coaching diploma. But even since then, I've done a course on emotional intelligence. I'm doing EFT at the minute. I've done NLP practitioner. And just last week, to really zone in on the mindfulness and the breath work, and that's partially where it came from, I actually started yoga teacher training.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So I think it's the learning. I've always been passionate about learning, but it's so much more interesting when it's something that you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny when you mentioned emotional intelligence, and I think it's so important that there's a lot of people out there that we could learn so much from just being just an awareness of our emotions as well. And like, could you talk about any kind of tips you'd give anyone about kind of like regulating emotions, or kind of just being more in tune with their emotions?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest one is to, like you said, the awareness. It's to actually stop and observe before you dive in. Think about what you're going to say or why you're going to say it, and is it a case of I'm only lashing out because of how I feel right now?
Yeah.
Or I think when you give yourself a chance to pause, I think that's the biggest thing. It's giving yourself that pause. And even being able to say, I know I did briefly share when it's difficult with a partner, but that thing of being able to say, I don't want to argue with you. We're going to disagree. We are different people. We have different personalities, so we have to. I always say, agree to disagree and accept each other's opinions, even if we don't like them, and that's not easy to do. But I think if you actually say it, well, then you're not kind of at loggerheads with each other. So it gives you that chance to step back rather than jump in and create more havoc, I suppose, within your personal relationships.
Absolutely. It's no, I think it's that space, and we were just literally talking about like the space before just before we came on air, like, and I was mentioning about the thing myself and my wife had geez, I'd say since very, very early on in our relationship, is that we never leave the house or go to bed on an argument. And sometimes it can lead to some very uncomfortable conversations where a lot of times me has been the person to apologize. But it's like it's I think this is one great thing about mindfulness, is that it lets you tune in with what emotions are there, and there's a poem that I've mentioned many times in the podcast called The Guest House,
Oh, I know it.
about welcoming in all sorts of emotions, because they're just guests. They're just here for a short stay and then they'll leave. And whereas sometimes we can be very negative against our emotion, and if something that's an uncomfortable emotion comes up, we can feel like that shouldn't be here, I shouldn't be feeling that. And
Yeah.
sometimes we just have to, like, I know the two of us have experienced grief over the years as well, and sometimes it just comes, and you just have to just live with it.
Yeah. I think it's accepting those emotions as they arise as well. I know for me, I used to buffer them or block them out, or I was always searching for the something to feel better. And I didn't realize that I had to look within. That was probably the biggest learning. And to actually, I probably had a lot of times where my gut was telling me what direction to go in or what decisions to make. But because I didn't understand it, I denied it, and I fed it all the wrong stuff. And I fed myself all the wrong stuff, hence the weight gain, because I was dumbing down what was really going on because I didn't know how to express it. And when it did come out, it came out as anger, it came out as frustration, it came out as fear. It was always, or else it was hidden. So I put a smile on my face. I was bubbly, happy Barbara, and there was no way nobody was going to know just how crap my life was.
The mask.
So yeah. And when you take the mask down, the freedom that you have, it's actually priceless once you remove that mask and step into being who you really are.
Yeah. Do you think there was a turning point in your journey that you kind of can look back at and say, that's when the penny dropped? That's when I could feel a shift in how I approach life.
I'd say, considering I had children, even amidst all the madness, because after my brother's death, I got married 3 weeks later. The marriage didn't last. And yet, as much as I was in turmoil, I always had this thing of, I don't want my girls to think I blamed their dad. I don't want them to take on, as I would say, my shit. So I always had this thing of they need to have a good relationship with their dad, despite how much pain it may cause me. They need to still be able to do whatever they decide they want to do. And I always used to say to them, you can be, do, and have everything you want. But yet I didn't actually feel that for myself.
Okay.
And after I lost weight and I kind of got that glimmer of, oh, I can actually do that. And then I left a job that was really, really toxic. I had left the job, and within 3 months I was in Slimming World.
Wow.
So that'll tell you. And then I suppose I think the biggest change was in 2016 when I first experienced mindfulness on the Camino.
Wow.
And it was that realization of all these times I've been going to places looking for peace. And what I learned from Sinead was the psychologist who was with us, and she was just unbelievable. What I learned from her was it didn't matter where I was, I could find my little bit of peace. And that to me was priceless. And although I didn't hone in on it fully then, it was still within my awareness. And I used to meditate by myself, but it wasn't quite the same because I was used to that group scenario. And then when I got to COVID, I found that again. Now, yes, I love, like, I meditate every day and every night now. And it just helps me to feel calm. It helps me to let go of whatever stuff. It helps me to kind of process whatever has happened in the day and to let go of the stuff so that I'm not taking it to sleep. Like, I moved house 4 weeks ago, and it was bizarre because actually my partner said to me, we didn't even have an argument. We didn't. Now, moving house is a very stressful thing. And we've moved, well, he helped me move from Dublin to Newbridge, and this is our third move. And this was actually the easiest.
Right.
And yet we were downsizing, which meant getting rid of a lot of stuff. Now, that was powerful. I can't recommend that highly enough. But when he said to me, believe we didn't even argue. I was like, I know. And he says, what would you say is different? And I said, 6 years down the road, Barbara is different. That's what's
Wow.
different. And it was actually 6 years ago that I went on the Camino for the first time.
Wow. And
So
I wanted to chat about the Camino because it's one of my bucket lists, the Camino de Santiago. To go. You brought your daughter onto the Camino as well.
I did, yeah, when she finished school back in 2018. Yeah, back in 2018, she didn't want the typical um drinking holiday. Thankfully neither of my girls are big into it, so which is great. So on the Camino, I had passed through a place called Pontevedra and I really loved it. But I remember being knacker tired, and I remember thinking, I'm coming back here. I'm definitely coming back to this particular town. I'd love to go back for a few days. So I suggested that we do it for 5 days, make Pontevedra our base, and then walk different routes off the Camino and come back into Pontevedra. So that's what we did for 5 days. Now, 4 years on, I just say she won't even cross the street with me. She's not into the walk, and she'll cross the street to come for a coffee, but she wouldn't be into the walk in the way I
Yeah.
would be.
And
Yeah,
like for people that don't know, actually, walking is a massive part of your life now.
it is.
Through
Yeah,
career change,
yeah,
you're now a guide on the Camino.
I am. Yeah. And that has just been unbelievable. It started off as I will do it with my Slim and World members. It was quite funny. One of my members who joined was going on the Camino, and in about 4 weeks after, or 6 weeks after she had joined, or maybe it was a little bit longer, and we're still the best of pals now. We became great friends for our love of the Camino. But about 6 months after she joined, she came into the group one night. She used to stay back and help me clean up. And all we ever talked about was the Camino and when we were going to get to go together because we'd had experiences separately. So she came in and said the flights were €95. I said, okay, grand. I remember going home and checking out, is there any communions, any confirmations, anything I need to be here for next April? And the next morning I messaged her and I said, I hope you're serious because you and I are going on the Camino. So then what happened was I said to her, actually, this could be a great idea. Why don't I use this to help motivate the other members in group? It'll help on their weight loss journey. It'll help them have a goal to work towards. It'll get them moving and they'll lose weight. They'll tone up. They'll be walking. It'll be good for their mental health. And then we'll all go on the Camino together. So the following April, 18 of us went on the Camino. 12 of them were my Slim and World members. The other
Wow.
6 were made up of other people bringing a friend or a couple of friends along. And from then I kept thinking, how else can I do this? So we did it again in 2019. We had planned to do it in 2020. Of course, COVID hit. But late in 2019, I was working with a coach and she said to me, Barbara, I don't understand why you are not doing this as your living, because every time you speak about it, you come alive. It lights you up. So I started to explore the Camino in Ireland. And then last year, when I was on the Kerry Camino, I met a man whose company is bringing groups on the Camino.
Brilliant.
And it's funny, the busman rang me and said, where are you? Half of your crew are back. And I said, oh, a couple of ladies are struggling. I'm at the back with them. You need to get here quick. You have to meet this guy.
Oh,
By the
brilliant.
time I got there, he was keeping him hostage until I arrived. So during the week, myself and Owen had a chat. What started off as an hour chat went on for 3 hours. And as they say, the rest is history.
Wow.
And just recently, I actually said to him, look, I've a couple of groups that are inquiring about bringing a group and it'll just be exclusively for them. So I do it in a couple of ways where I just put out dates and a group is formed from random
Yeah.
people that come along. But then, so say for example, I have a fitness group that are coming with me next year. 20 of them have booked in and I've had a couple of inquiries from other groups.
Like I kind of roughly know. Like I've done the Carrick Camino in Carrick and Shannon through Leitrim, and lovely walk and really enjoyed it. But I have this. I've talked to people. I've done the Camino. I've never done it myself. Camino de Santiago, Camino de Santiago, and a lot of them talk. Like I know Pat Dibley did it recently, 30 days, and I
Yeah,
know another friend, Caroline, who also did, I think around 30 days as well, and it sounds like a very spiritual experience.
it is.
Can you, for someone who knows nothing about it, can you tell us what attracts and what is so important about it?
Yeah.
What's so special?
Well, it's funny because not, I suppose some people are aware and some aren't, but the Camino de Santiago is actually a pilgrimage, and it originated with St. James spreading Christianity across Europe, and eventually landing in Santiago de Compostela. Um, so people literally used to travel the whole way across France and Spain, and then when it became a spiritual route, what they did was extended it out. So basically, what you do is you follow the yarrows. They are your guide or your direction. And I think certainly for me, I didn't know what to expect. I just knew that I was looking for some way to explain what was happening for me in my life. I knew I wasn't entirely happy emotionally, and that I still felt that I was suffering, but I felt that I needed time to just be. And all I have to think about, and this is the one thing I say to people when they're on the Camino, all you have to think about is one foot in front of the other. You don't have to think about where you're going to sleep. That's taken care of. You don't have to think about where you're going to eat. Breakfast is part of the deal, and you stop at whatever cafe you choose whenever you feel you're ready to stop. So it's not a case of, this is where we're going to be. We know where we're going to start. We know we're going to finish at the end of each day. We don't know how long it's going to take. We don't know, like, I'm all for stopping and smelling the roses, dipping the feet in the river, looking at the grass growing, etc. So there's never any pressure. And then there's no pressure to be part of the group. But what I did introduce in May with the group that I brought was having a time of silence and mindfulness every single day. And it got to the point that they used to say to me, when are we having that? And by the end of the week, we were doing it twice because they enjoyed it so much. And I was encouraging them not to listen to music, but to think about, what do you feel? What can you hear? What can you see? What's really going on? What are you experiencing? It's very hard to describe because you come across some places with really, really deep history. Some magnificent churches, some do be open, some don't. I think it's the people that you meet, the stories you share, this thing of, I may never see them again, so you can unburden yourself. There's a freedom in it. And that, to me, I was searching for freedom, personal freedom, for so long. And that's what I found. It was the personal peace and the freedom to just be yourself as you work your way through the day. But it's the crack that you have and the people you meet, and then the coming together in the evening. Like, we used to joke on some of the trips that I've had where you'd be sitting in restaurants like with your shoes and socks off and examining your feet and sticking Compeed plasters on. And we were like,
I'd say you go through some amount of Compeed, all right.
Yeah. And we were like, could you imagine doing that in a restaurant in Ireland? You'd be thrown out. But it's
everyone's
like,
on the same journey.
Normal. Yeah. Yeah.
So for people who don't know, so there's many different routes, but all goes towards one central place, Santiago. Is it a town, or is it
it's actually a city? There's a big cathedral. There's St. James's Cathedral, and I think it's the head of St. James is buried in a crypt beneath the altar. Very, very rich. The city itself, there's an old city and the new city. So there's great history. There's a university there too. And it even has its own airport. So it's very accessible as well. Yeah.
Wow. And
great history.
In terms of the trips you're doing, you're planning now, how long would you go for? Or
we would do 7 days. And at the moment, most of what I do is the last 7 days on either the Portuguese route from Valencia, and then we go into Tui on the first day, and then we work our way towards Santiago. And then the French way, the last 7 days, is Sarria into Santiago.
Right. Wow.
So the original route is from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port into Santiago. And last year, to celebrate my 50th, I went off on my own and did 7 days walking. I was away for 9 days, from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port up in the Pyrenees into Logroño, and it was just the most amazing experience ever. The people I met, it was unbelievable. Wow.
And you say you do accommodation, so you have a rough idea then which town you're going to each day.
We know each day which town we're going to go to. We know where we're going to stay. Now, there are people who will literally go with their rucksack, and you could end up, could arrive in a town and there'd be no accommodation. You might have to walk 3 or 4 kilometers. And it's funny because I had my accommodation booked last year in October, and there was 2 people that were part of a group that I met. Now, when I say a group, we formed a group,
Yes.
just 2 people that we met. And I remember going, oh my God, I'm going to be going 2 or 3 kilometers beyond this town on my own. I wonder what way that's going to work. And it ended up the 2 of the people ended up, they couldn't get accommodation. So I was half delighted because I was like,
Yeah.
great, I'm not going to be on my
Yeah.
own.
Yeah.
But I always do say the Camino always provides, there's a reason things will work out the way they do, whether it's a lesson you need to learn, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And this particular day, 2 people came with me, and we passed by a church, and one of the guys, it's mad because one of the first people I met was from Tralee, and because of the link with the Kerry Camino, I was like, everywhere I go, it's always the Kerry people that I seem to gel
Yeah.
with first. Anyway, he was learning Spanish because he was going off to Colombia. Well, that was his intention when he took early retirement. And he was, everywhere he came along as a Spanish person, he was saying buenos dias or buenas noches or whatever it was, or buenas tardes for the afternoon. And some guy answered with, is that an Irish accent I hear? And it was a man from he was originally from South Africa. And he was telling us about this amazing monastery and how he came across it when he was walking the Camino 10 years ago, and he was restoring it. And he said, normally I let people come in the morning and if you give a donation. But he said, because you're Irish, I'm going to let you in now. Come on, and I'll unlock it. So he let us in. He explained some of the amazing history, but there was an unbelievable presence, and we all felt it. And he told us afterwards that he doesn't let people in anymore because he had stage 4 cancer, and he's trying to prolong his life because he has a young child. So we felt really privileged. And I said to them afterwards, I told you, the Camino always provides. There was a reason you were to be with me today.
Yeah.
It was powerful. We went back the next morning and people were going, you're going the wrong way. We went, no, we know where we're going, because we knew we just wanted to go back one more time before we moved on to the next town.
Wow.
So,
it just sounds like such an amazing experience, and it's definitely something I want to do. I've a love of walk myself, and I'll have to join you for I think what's coming up next. Actually, have you any more Kerry Caminos this year, or?
Unfortunately, I don't think the Kerry Camino is going to go ahead in October. Okay. There is one the 13th to the 17th, but there's a couple of people with injuries and different things have come up that I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay.
One thing that I do, which I never thought I would end up doing, I'm actually doing my first ever divorce retreat in November, also in Kerry, and it's going to incorporate some mindfulness, yoga, some walking, and then some coaching around navigating the journey as somebody who's been in that position as well. And it's in conjunction with Mel Murphy, who is a divorce coach as well. So
and I've met Mel before as well, actually. Sure, we will. That is a fantastic service, and I'm sure it's going to help many people. Barbara, I could always talk to you for days and days, but I have to ask a question because I've asked it for every single guest since I started. Barbara, if I say the words mindful living, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to live a mindful life?
Well, we mentioned awareness earlier. That's certainly the first thing. Not living in the past, trying not to live in the future, because I was caught in both worlds, because I suppose all we have is what's happening here and now. So I think the big thing is the awareness as to how I show up in the moment, and not letting things that are beyond my control have the same impact that they maybe once would have had, giving myself a chance to just stop and take it all in before I proceed. As I always say, it's a bit like that analogy, stop, take the time to then O for observe, and then P. I know people say pause. I say proceed with caution, a bit like the eel sign, so that you're not rushing in. So I think it's just being in the now, learning to sit with yourself, even with the difficult stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful. It's a lovely way to finish our conversation. And I have to say, I love chatting to you, Barbara, and I've learned so much. And I was actually, as you were talking about the Camino, I was getting goosebumps. So I know I have to join you for a Camino some year. Um, Barbara, if for anyone that actually is interested in contacting you, what's the best way to contact you?
Well, believe it or not, I'm still working on the website, and even saying it, my gut's going, ugh, because I've been working on it for a while. But you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Barbara Byrne Coaching and Camino. I'm on LinkedIn, Barbara Byrne. And there is a Linktree link, which is almost like a website that gives you links to all the different things and the dates for, like, I'll be doing the Camino at Easter time next year. I think yeah, it'll be, but it's after, that week in between. I've got a group going in May and a group going in July before my daughter gets married. So, or if anybody's interested in having their own group,
Yeah,
we can work around those dates as well.
that is fantastic. And I'll put all those details on our show notes page as well. So
Thanks.
if anyone needs to contact you, they can. Barbara Byrne, thank you so much for finally sitting down with us and chatting on the Mindful Living Guide.
Thanks a million.
So there you have episode 32 of the Mindful Living Guide. If you, after listening to that, and you have a desire to go on the Camino, or if you are interested in Barbara's divorce retreat, I will put all the details up in the show notes. If you look at the link in for the podcast, you'll see a link to the show notes, and I'll have all the details there. Listen, there's not much else for me to say this week. I'll say thank you so much for the support. I was blown away by the amount of downloads we got for our first interview back last week with John Murray, and it's been going a lot better than I expected. So I thought after a year break it might have gone down, but there's still a big interest in mindfulness and in just bringing mindful principles into our life. As always, if you want to follow us, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and hopefully this has helped you in some way just break away from the norm and the autopilot of each day, and give you a few ideas of things that you could do for yourself. So listen, take care of yourself, have a brilliant week, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Mindful Living Guide.